On a full moon night, two men are talking on top of a mountain. The black-haired young man is all beaten up, and he's thanking the other for something. In response, the other says that thanks to the young man, he restored all the records of the Murim Alliance. The Alliance leader, named Young So, then thanks the boy for his service, but the injured man just says he did what he was told: memorize and restore. He then asks if the price for his service will be his own life. Young So draws his sword and says the young man has memorized all the Alliance's secrets. Therefore, for the sake of justice and security, he must vanish along with all his memories. The injured young man starts to laugh, mocking the great cause the leader mentioned. He continues to question if the Murim Alliance is truly in danger as the man claims. With that, he stands up and says the Alliance has already been defeated by the demonic cult. The leader then vows to defeat the cult and raise the Murim flag once more. The protagonist finds this very moving and wonders how he will establish this cause. But seeing the leader value his cause more than lives, he's not sure who the real villain is. At that moment, the red-eyed man accuses him of being tainted by the demonic cult. The young man then throws himself off the cliff, saying he regrets entrusting his fate to them. With his hand covered in red, he decides that at least his departure will be on his own terms, and so he decides to end it all right then and there, with his own hands. As he falls, he remembers that having all those memories made his life a living nightmare. His mind goes back to the beginning of the Great War between the Alliance and the demonic cult. In the end, the Alliance fled, using the boy's sect and his brothers as human shields. The Alliance then made him an offer to memorize their records in exchange for his brother's safety. Now, lying on the ground, he regrets not having practiced his martial arts diligently. He cries out to the heavens for being given a skill as useless as his memory. In his final moments, he looks at his wrist and deeply regrets everything. If only he were strong enough to save his brothers and not depend on others for protection. Suddenly, a bright light appears, and someone asks if he's just going to give up and not get back up. A wooden sword hits him, and the voice calls him an idiot, saying his brothers endured more. The young man grips the sword tightly and starts complaining about his cursed memory. With a bleeding nose, he realizes that now, of all things, his memory is making him remember the pain. The boy screams in desperation because the pain he is feeling is very real. When he opens his eyes, he is confused to see several people in a training ground. He is completely shocked and tries to understand where he is now. Then, he recognizes the place as the training ground of his Tai sect. Soon, he sees his friends looking at him with expressions of total concern on their faces. Seeing his companions, he turns red and is speechless at the unexpected situation. Without much thought, his body starts moving on its own, going forward, running towards them. The young man hugs them tightly, relieved to see them again. The memory of his sister Hong being injured flashes through his mind. The girl is startled by his actions and asks what senior brother Jin is doing. Another memory of his friend Junpyo, fallen, also comes to his thoughts. All his younger brothers and sisters from the Taya sect are there, watching him. Crying, he understands that this is his life flashing before his eyes, but at least he is happy to see his friends one last time before he departs. The two are confused and wonder what the protagonist is talking about now. He pinches the girl's cheek and says she was cute when she was younger and that he misses it. Then he pinches his friend's cheek and remembers that he used to wet the bed as a child. Suddenly, someone else calls out to him, asking if he's pretending to be crazy to avoid fighting. The bully threatens him, saying that if he doesn't pick up the sword, his younger brothers will have to fight in his place. Our hero is annoyed to have to remember this guy of all people in his final moments. This is Jai Chiliang, a sponsor's son who used training to hurt the others. Before, everyone was afraid to fight back. But now the young man grabs his sword with determination. He prepares to fight and wonders if he should get revenge for everything that happened in the past. The bully gets furious and grinds his teeth at the young man's defiant attitude. He then charges forward to attack, calling the protagonist an arrogant, cocky punk. But the black-haired boy remains calm and watches his enemy's movement closely. He remembers the sword art that caused him so much suffering in his past life. The triple ghost blade. It is a martial art taught by a wanderer. With rough forms and a fierce momentum, its intentional aim for the eyes left everyone in the sect defenseless. And he memorized it all. In the past, he couldn't fight back, leaving his friends scared, but now it's different. But he defends himself with the sword, saying he won't fall for that trick again. The attacker is completely shocked and doesn't understand what just happened. In that archive, he remembers having to memorize many far more complex techniques. His eyes shine as he recalls every detail of the martial arts. He had to desperately commit every scroll of the Alliance to memory. With this, he sees the entire energy flow of his opponent's strike right in front of him. His eye analyzes every movement, allowing him to find an opening to attack. He then dodges the blow and prepares to use one of the techniques he learned. The protagonist uses the lesser Heaven Sword art to attack the bully. The boy is in shock after being hit by a technique he considers impossible. With a smile, our hero asks how it feels to be beaten with his own technique. He feels great being able to hit the guy with the same martial art from the sect, and for him, this feeling of revenge is incredibly refreshing and satisfying. The two continue to fight in the middle of the training yard. As everyone watches, the bully gets tired, and the protagonist calmly prepares for the next attack. Everyone is amazed as the aggressor yells at him for daring to use that art against him. Full of rage, the man screams uncontrollably at the protagonist for his audacity. He promises the young man will pay dearly for everything he did to him in that moment. But with a single strike, the protagonist knocks him to the ground, leaving him unconscious. One of the younger girls is impressed with senior brother Jin's strength. Soon, all the children are celebrating the victory and apologizing for thinking he was pathetic. Our hero feels satisfied with the outcome of the little fight he just had. He's happy he got to beat up the bully before heading to the afterlife. Suddenly, the young man feels a hard punch and cries out in pain, completely confused. His pink-haired friend asks if he's gone crazy for doing that to the guy. She scolds him, worried about the sponsorship and what will happen to the sect. The pain from the slap makes him realize that all of this is not just a memory of the past. He is confused because it doesn't seem like his life is flashing before his eyes. His younger sister stares at him with a strange smile and a dark expression. Then she punches him and yells, asking what kind of nonsense he's talking about. From the impact, he falls backward, and his vision starts to get blurry and confused. Lying on the ground, he finally understands that somehow he has managed to return to the past. After a while, the young man wakes up in a room full of medicine drawers. He is lying on a bed with some bandages and a twig in his mouth for the pain. As he opens his eyes, he realizes he's in the infirmary and tries to gather his thoughts. It all started with the second coming of the demonic cult and the war against the Alliance. His sect was also nearly wiped out for being part of the Murim Alliance. Because of his good memory, he was chosen for a special and important mission. He had to memorize and restore all the books and documents of the Alliance. The young man was determined to engrave everything in his mind without missing a single character. In return, he asked that his younger brothers be spared from the battles, but in the end, his memory was seen as a threat, and he was betrayed by everyone. After his departure, he thought he was gone for good, but he returned to the past, and something in his eyes seems to have completely changed after this experience. Thanks to the memories from the books, he now has knowledge of various martial arts. With this knowledge, he was able to take down the bully he could never beat before. Now in the infirmary, he wonders what on earth is happening to him. His body and clothes have returned to the past, but the dragon bracelet came with him. This piece of jewelry was obtained in one of the few victories against the demonic cult in the war. He wonders if the bracelet has something to do with his return to the past. As he thinks about this, he hears a voice outside the infirmary and pays close attention. It's Chia Liang's father yelling at the sect leader about what happened to his son. The sect leader apologizes and says he will reprimand the young man for his actions. This person is the guild master, and he demands that they discipline the boy, Jin So-woon. The sect leader continues to apologize for the incident and tries to calm the situation. Hearing this, our hero remembers all his companions who are sacrificed. The images of his fallen friends return to his mind, and he reflects on this second life. He cannot forget the moment he threw himself from the cliff to start over. Hungrily, he breaks the twig that was in his mouth and gets out of bed. The protagonist then prepares to leave the infirmary and face the situation. With that, he ties a piece of wood to his arm and gets ready to act. The young man is determined to confront the guild master with a confident smile on his face. The sect leader thanks the man for letting the matter go and says goodbye. Chia Leung's father says he will forget what happened, but just for that one time. Suddenly, the protagonist appears on the roof and says he heard they were looking for him. He introduces himself as Jin So-woon, a humble country boy from the Taya sect, with a smile. The two are surprised to see him there and wonder who this strange boy is. The man grabs him, calling him the wretch who hurt his precious son. The young man is offended by the name, calling and complains that they aren't that far apart in age. Both he and the guild master are confused by the boy's reaction at that moment. He remembers he has been revived and composes himself, saying he won't follow the script of his past life. The man yells that his son doesn't need to train and that the sect should take care of him. The young man complains that more than 10 of his brothers couldn't get up after being beaten by him. Then he scoffs, saying the guild master's imagination is quite vivid. The man is furious at the young man's audacity, and his servant tries to calm him down. He grabs him and asks if the boy is acting so arrogantly because he can afford the consequences. The protagonist repeats the word responsibility with a serious and defiant look. The guild master laughs and says he can negotiate with any other sect if he wants, and he threatens that if he does, the Taya sect will go hungry the very next day. The sect belongs to the 108 Peaks, which were the pinnacle of the Murim alliance in the past. But now, the sect has a privilege to recommend a disciple to the Murim Academy. The guild master's son paid a huge fee to enter the academy through this recommendation, and for that, he joined their insignificant Taya sect as a lay disciple. The young man faces the man and, with a smile, tells him to do whatever he wants with the sect. He accepts the responsibility, but says he's curious about one very important thing. With less than a year until the special admission evaluation, he has a question. He asks with a wicked smile why he chose their sect and not the others. The man is speechless and filled with rage upon hearing the young man's question. In his past life, he catered to all the guild's whims, and the disrespect was constant. They recommended the guild master's son and got him into the Murim Academy without question. But after Chia Leung entered the academy, the guild cut off the sect's sponsorship. In a whisper, he says that the Taya sect is the only one that can save the guild. The man is shocked by the young man's audacity and confidence in saying that. The protagonist steps away from him and prepares for what's to come. He learned that begging for protection is useless, and that he must have the strength to protect himself. The guild master calls him an insolent brat and charges forward to attack him in a fury. This was the lesson the protagonist learned from his first life experience, but now he wonders how he will gain this strength, as he still doesn't have a plan. The sun rises on the horizon, illuminating the landscape with a soft, golden light. The roots of a plant glow with a mysterious energy in a dark cave. Now, he has only one task in mind: to become stronger at all costs. But with the sect's methods, that will be difficult. So there's only one method left for him. He needs to acquire internal energy through a spiritual elixir, like the fire ginseng. Thanks to his memory, he has access to all records of spiritual elixirs. He plans to find and consume all the elixirs, but the problem is the guardian. Determined, he decides that obtaining the 10,000-year-old ginseng is his first step. He imagines himself using his sword art to subdue the guardian with a single blow. But he knows his energy and sword are weak, and beating the bully was his limit. Then he remembers an important detail that could change everything for him now. With a wicked smile, he takes his wooden sword and engulfs it in flames. After reading so many books, he realized that sword skills aren't everything. He doesn't need complex martial arts or techniques to defeat his enemies. For him, what really matters is just coming out victorious in the upcoming battle. He thanks the scoundrels of the Miram Alliance for all the knowledge they gave him. With a battle cry, he prepares to use all his power against the Guardian. In the record book, he reads about the human-faced spider and how to defeat it. The creature emerges from the darkness with its sharp fangs and multiple eyes. The protagonist prepares to face the beast and put his plan into action. He approaches the monster cautiously and waits for the right moment to strike. He knows it's not enough yet and needs more power to win. He screams in desperation, feeling that the power he has gained is still too little. Even after devouring the rare treasure, his internal energy is still at a low level. He complains that the sex methods are flawed but quickly corrects himself and takes the blame. Sitting on the ground, he reflects on his current situation and what he needs to do. With a clenched fist, he says that at this rate, he won't be able to protect the sect. The young man feels powerless against what's to come and despairs inwardly. He remembers that in the war, low-ranking martial artists are just shields. That's why he needs to become a key figure in the alliance before the war begins. This is the only way to save the sect and ensure his friends do not perish. But with his current strength, he won't even be able to pass the admission exam. He shouts in frustration because if things continue like this, nothing will change in the future. The drops of energy fall slowly, and he realizes he needs to increase his power. He knows he needs more elixirs to get stronger and achieve his goal. Suddenly, he remembers the Manhwa elixir that the bully was going to take. The boy's father spent a fortune to obtain the elixir for his son. But one day before he was to take the elixir, the item simply vanished without a trace. The thief's identity was never revealed, and this gives him a chance to act. With a determined look, he says that humans always leave traces, and he can find them. He concentrates and uses his memory to score all the records he has stored. He recalls the monthly report from the Hefei branch of the Miram Alliance in his mind. A red arrow guides him through his thoughts to the information he needs. He follows the trail in his mind, determined to find the clue he's looking for. He knows the clue is buried somewhere in his memories, and he will find it. He searches through the Alliance's entry logs and mission reports for something. Every record he memorized passes before his eyes at an incredible speed. He compiles all the information and, by deduction, arrives at 3 main suspects. With the names in hand, he prepares to put his plan into action immediately. He is surprised to see how useful being a walking library can be. With a confident smile, he says he will take the snow plum pill for himself. Suddenly, the bracelet on his wrist begins to glow with an intense light. He is confused to see the bracelet glow after defeating the spider. The young man wonders why the dragon bracelet is suddenly glowing. A dark and powerful energy emanates from the bracelet, and he is startled by what is happening. The bracelet's energy moves towards the spider's core to absorb it. The creature's red core is enveloped by the dark energy and sucked into the bracelet. The energy intensifies, and the protagonist feels his power increasing rapidly. He realizes the bracelet is absorbing the core of the human-faced spider. The light in the cave shines brightly as the absorption process continues. The young man stands at the center of the energy and feels his body being filled with new power. The red and blue energy mix around him, creating a spectacle of lights. His eyes glow with the new strength he has just acquired unexpectedly. He laughs insanely and shouts that what just happened is too incredible. The bracelet was a trophy from a difficult battle and a relic of the demonic cult. He kept the bracelet to honor the victory and the sacrifice of his companions. With a punch in the air, he tests his new strength and feels the energy flowing through his body. A wave of power envelops him, and he feels stronger than ever before in his life. The bracelet purifies the core's energy and harmonizes it with the sect's methods. Thanks to the demonic treasure, his internal energy has skyrocketed, and he feels renewed. In a nearby town, people are talking about the elixir the guild leader bought. Everyone congratulates the leader and comments on how money can buy success. The guild master's son boasts about the elixir and its effectiveness to his friends and colleagues. He is proud that his father secured such a rare treasure just for him. The sect leader's daughter watches him from a distance with a thoughtful and worried look. She remembers the day the protagonist faced the guild master with courage. She thinks she should have acted instead of letting her senior brother face it all alone. After that incident, he left the sect so as not to cause any more trouble for anyone. She calls him an idiot for thinking he was being considerate by leaving the sect. Suddenly, one of the younger brothers calls her to eat, interrupting her thoughts. The boy offers her a plate of food with a cheerful and happy smile. All the younger brothers surround her and invite her to enjoy the feast with them. The guild leader's son promises revenge against the sect as soon as the banquet is over. The pink-haired girl laughs and offers food to her brothers, saying they are starving. One of the children notices that she was thinking about senior brother Jin again. The others agree, and she gets embarrassed, calling them brats and telling them to shut up. The boys decide to save some rice cakes and meat for the protagonist, who hasn't eaten yet. The older sister smiles at their concern for their departed friend. She then takes a piece of food and eats it in front of them to tease them. With a smile, she says that if they don't eat now, she'll take it all for herself. The children hurry to eat everything before she takes more food from them. She laughs at their reaction and wonders where the protagonist is and why he left the children. She calls him an idiot in her thoughts as she watches the lanterns in the sky. The night is starry, and the full moon illuminates the city with its silvery light. Inside the banquet hall, the guild leader toasts with his guests and friends. Everyone drinks and has fun enjoying the party and the abundant food that was served. A dancer performs in the center of the hall, enchanting everyone with her grace. Outside, 3 mysterious figures move across the rooftops with agility. One of the masked men leaps with his sword in hand, ready to strike. He throws a dart towards a guard on watch in the courtyard. The guard is hit and falls to the ground as the masked man smiles maliciously. He finds the famous Manhwa elixir and scoffs at the guild's vault security. He opens the box and sees the elixir glowing with an intense red light. Satisfied with what he found, he closes the box and prepares to flee the scene. He laughs excitedly because, with the elixir, he will finally have the energy to learn a new technique. He knows he needs to get out of there fast before someone discovers him and stops him. Suddenly, a sword pierces his chest, and he falls to the ground, gravely wounded. Another masked man attacks him from behind, and he falls lifeless in the middle of the forest. The attacker takes the elixir and says that he also really needs that precious item. He clutches the box tightly and prepares to leave with his new treasure. The scene shifts back to a few days before the robbery in a hunting goods store. The store is filled with weapons and animal pelts, and a man stands behind the counter. The shopkeeper's eyes widen as he sees the protagonist entering his store. The young man says he heard the shopkeeper deals in hard to get goods and came to look. With a smile, he asks if the shopkeeper happens to deal in traps that catch people. The man is surprised and finds the customer very interesting with his unusual request. He boasts about having all kinds of traps, from ones for rabbits to ones for bears. The protagonist asks for a trap for tigers or bears, and the shopkeeper is confused. He says he needs something that activates fast enough not to pull out a single hair. With a creepy smile, he asks for something that can send the target to the beyond in one hit. The shopkeeper feels a chill, and his instinct tells him not to sell anything to that boy. In the forest, the protagonist is standing over the body of the man he just defeated. The other thief says he heard they were famous and thought it would be difficult. He holds the elixir with a victorious smile and prepares to leave. His younger brother praises him, saying he is as incredible as he always was in the sect. The thief thinks it was too easy and boasts about his skill to his companion. They decide to get rid of the body and report the other as missing to avoid suspicion. Before they leave, they decide to take a look at the snow plum peel. They open the box and are amazed by the glow and fragrance of the elixir. The protagonist appears behind them and comments that there are 2 mouths but only 1 pill. The two are shocked and confused by the sudden appearance of the masked young man. He moves forward to attack them, and they prepare to fight the new enemy. The thief is scared and asks when the protagonist got there without them noticing. The older brother orders him to get the thief immediately, and they advance. He says this is the price for coveting something beyond 1 station. The protagonist calls them shameless thieves and accuses them of stealing first. They attack him with their swords, and the young man dodges the blows with agility and grace. One of the thieves tries an overhead strike, but the protagonist easily dodges it. He blocks the attack with his sword and quickly prepares for the counter-attack. With a warning, he tells the thieves to be careful where they step in the forest. One of the thieves steps on a trap and is caught by surprise by the device. He screams in pain as the trap snaps shut on his leg, pinning him in place. The protagonist smiles from behind his mask as his plan worked perfectly. The man screams in pain as sweat pours down his face, and he writhes on the ground. The sound of his scream echoes through the dark forest under the light of the full moon. The older brother shouts the name of his fallen companion, and the protagonist warns him. The thief calls him a coward for using such low tricks in a sword fight. He charges to attack and demands that the young man take off his mask and reveal his identity. The protagonist picks up a stone from the ground and asks if he wants to know who he is. He says he's just a disciple from some sect, a nobody in the world. He throws the stone on the ground and calls the thief old-fashioned for his attitude. The protagonist throws several traps toward the thief to distract him. The man grinds his teeth in anger and declares himself the new owner of the plum pill. The protagonist says that attackers who took down their target don't deserve such a prize. He explains that he discovered the culprit by noticing that Chuhan Gak's tracks had vanished. No expert appeared after consuming the elixir, and he investigated the records. He found the trail and concluded that Chohan Gak was taken out and buried in the forest. He accuses the 2 Cheongchang swords of having finished off and consumed the elixir. The protagonist confirms that he knows who they are, and that he investigated them carefully. The thief threatens him with the revenge of the Cheongchang sect and the Martial Alliance. The masked young man says he didn't know he'd run into another thief while stealing. The thief calls him a trickster and tries to punch one of the traps he threw. He believes he can destroy the trap with his strength and move on. The protagonist scatters several traps on the ground to surround his enemies. The younger brother who was trapped manages to break free and destroy the traps. The masked young man moves away to avoid being caught by the closing traps. The older brother vows to tear off his mask, and the younger one praises him for his help. The protagonist remains silent for a moment, watching the situation unfold. Suddenly, he starts running away, and the thieves wonder if he is fleeing. The older brother tells the other to chase him, and they follow him through the forest. The thief says they just need to follow his steps, and there's nothing to worry about. The younger one praises his older brother's intelligence, and they continue the pursuit. The two follow the protagonist closely, unaware of the danger that awaits them. They follow the footprints left by the masked young man in the grass without suspicion. They laugh and say that the protagonist's little tricks won't work on them. Suddenly, a white light explodes in front of them, and they are caught by surprise. The protagonist turns around and faces them with a cold, calculating look from behind the mask. The thieves laugh and say that the young man's life ends right there, in that fight. The two leap to attack, but something holds them in place before they can advance. The older brother is shocked to see his feet trapped by leaf traps. The leaves wrap around their ankles, preventing them from moving freely. The protagonist watches in silence as the two struggle to free themselves from the traps. The traps snap shut with force, and the two are thrown to the ground by the impact. They look at their feet and see the bear traps clamped onto their legs. Redness pours from their wounds, and they scream in pain and surprise at what happened. They fall to the ground, gravely injured and not understanding how they were caught in the trap. The protagonist admits he was startled and that the thieves were smarter than he expected. He reveals that they followed his steps, but missed an important detail along the way. Among the traps, he stepped in specific places with absolute precision and zero error. The thief calls him crazy and says it's impossible to move with such precision. He asks how the young man managed to move so precisely between the traps. The protagonist draws his sword and says it's because of his extraordinary memory. He claims that his memory is the only gift the heavens have ever given him in his life. With one swift move, he takes down both thieves, and the scene turns red. Elsewhere, a man asks about the Tai sect of Hefei and its status. He sips a cup of tea while waiting for his companion's response. The chief strategist of the martial alliance, Juge Samyong, is interested in the sect. The alliance elder, Namgung T1, confirms that the sect is one of the 108. The strategist comments that it's time for some of the peaks to be replaced by others. He says that if they are to talk about expanding sects, it should be the Iron Sword sect. The elder offers the strategist some tea and reveals that he supports the Iron Sword sect. The strategist reminds him that the peak sects are not replaced without a major mistake. The elder asks if the Taya sect has done something wrong to deserve such treatment. He explains that the sect is using its special admission privilege for business. The strategist is surprised and questions if the sect is using the peak's privilege. With a malicious smile, the elder confirms that it is for personal gain and self-interest. A blue bird observes the scene from afar, perched on a tree branch. The strategist remains silent for a moment, processing the information he has received. The elder tells him not to misunderstand, and that he is not trying to get a spot. With a serious look, he continues to explain his position on the delicate matter. He reminds him that the alliance granted these privileges to honor those who fought with them. He feels that the meaning of these honors is being tarnished by the sect's attitude. As a member of the alliance, he says that it breaks his heart and he feels betrayed. Elsewhere, a man drinks alone at a wooden table under the starry night. The protagonist is meditating, and his blue energy flows intensely through his body. He concentrates the energy in his back and feels his power strengthening. Sweat drips down his face as he continues the process of absorbing energy. His eyes open, and he feels the new strength he has acquired from the elixir. He sits on the wooden floor and admires the result of his intense training. He feels he has gained about 30 years of internal energy with the snow pill. With a smile, he celebrates having surpassed the energy level of his past life. He goes down the stairs of the place where he was training and prepares to leave. He finds a boy sleeping at a table and approaches to wake him up. The boy wakes up startled and is happy to see that the young master has finally come out. He says he was worried, and the protagonist urgently asks for something to eat. The boy is startled by the request and says the kitchen is already closed for the night. The protagonist offers coins and says he will pay for a week of room and board in advance. With a smile, he thinks that money makes the world go round and gets what he wants. He remembers a white tiger roaring with its blue energy around it. The bracelet didn't just work on demonic beasts, but on any living being. He could extract life force and absorb it into his own kai to strengthen himself. With the tiger's pelt as a bonus, he got enough money to support himself for a while. He is happy to have found a way to make money, but the problem is something else. The bracelet's power to absorb the life of other creatures is very dangerous. It's an ability that could easily be mistaken for a technique of the demonic cult. The heaven-devouring art is one of the 10 arts forbidden by the Alliance, and the bracelet is the same. If the Alliance finds out, not only he but his entire sect will be in danger. The boy returns with the food, and the protagonist sits down to eat hungrily. He is amazed by the food, and thanks the boy for the delicious feast. As he eats, He wonders why the boy doesn't leave and just watches him. The boy asks if he has heard the latest rumor, and the protagonist is curious. He talks about the bank at the guild, held to celebrate obtaining the elixir, and he says that the elixir was stolen in the middle of the banquet. To everyone's surprise, the thief must be very skilled, and the Alliance has sent an investigation team. The protagonist chokes on his food upon hearing that they are going to catch the culprit. The boy offers him water, and he says he's fine and asks him to continue the story. He asks if the Alliance has found any evidence or if they have arrested anyone. He panics because if they've arrested an innocent person, he's in trouble for being the real culprit. The boy says the trail has gone cold, and they haven't found anything on the thief. The protagonist sighs in relief and thinks the owner of the elixir must be devastated. The banquet ended early, but another one is being held in Hefei, and they are happy. The boy reveals that the new banquet is at the Iron Sword sect, and the protagonist is startled. He says that the sect leader is celebrating his birthday with a 7-day party. The protagonist remembers that it was around this time that the birthday banquet took place. In his past life, something terrible happened during the sect leader's banquet. The leader of the Iron Sword sect humiliated his father in front of all the guests. He had to kneel and apologize for something he hadn't done at the party. His father was forced to humble himself before countless people and beg for forgiveness. The protagonist remembers being dragged and beaten by everyone at the party, and all of this happened because of him, the son who caused all the trouble. With a clenched fist, he promises that this time things will be different for him. He sits on a rooftop and watches the night with a determined and cold look. The young man thanks him for the food, and besides, he needs to avoid the Iron Sword sect at all costs. He won't let the past humiliation repeat itself as the waiter calls him master. Our hero will not allow his father to suffer for his sake again, or so he thought. But he wonders why he is suddenly in the middle of an intense fight against a huge guy. It turns out he is at the 60th birthday banquet of the Iron Sword sect leader. And to make matters worse, he is dueling the sect leader's grandson and doesn't understand why. The scene then flashes back to a few days earlier at the Taya sect, with everyone training in the courtyard. One of the boys sits down exhausted and complains that his legs hurt so much he thinks he's going to pass out. These are the gold, silver, and bronze brothers, all tired after the day's hard training. One of them complains about doing 100 strikes in this heat and doubts it really helps with training. The older brother teases him, reminding him that he wanted to be cool like senior brother Jin. The other says it's the same thing and wonders what the protagonist is doing now. The youngest comments with concern that it's been over a week since he's returned to the sect. One of them thinks he might be ashamed for hitting senior brother Jai, and that's why he disappeared. But another worries if he didn't leave the sect out of fear of retaliation from the guild because of him. One of the friends praises him, but the other scolds him for talking as if he has passed on. Suddenly, the youngest shouts happily because he sees that senior brother Jin has finally returned. The protagonist walks back to the Tai sect with a bag on his back, looking determined. He thinks that if he's not there, his father won't be humiliated, but remembers that the sect suffered a lot afterward, so he decides he doesn't need to overthink it and will simply not go to the Iron Sword sect. The sign with the name of the Taya sect is shown as he approaches the large gate. The young man decides that not only he, but the entire Taya sect should not go to the birthday banquet. But for that, he needs a good excuse, and at that moment, someone calls him from a distance. The three brothers run to welcome him and ask where he has been for so long. Soon, the other younger brothers surround him and ask him to teach them the technique he used in the fight. He pets the younger ones and asks if they behaved, and they confirm they did. Suddenly, a furious voice shouts his name and calls him a wretch, interrupting the moment. It's his father, Jin Taizan, the leader of the sect's outer hall, and he is very angry. The young man's eyes fill with tears, and he stammers as he calls out to his father in that instant. He runs to hug him, thinking he never imagined he would do this in his entire life. But his father hits him on the head and scolds him for acting like a madman and disappearing. He says that, because of the trouble with the guild, the Tei sect was almost thrown out onto the streets. In the distance, the bully Chileong appears and shouts happily that the wretch has finally returned. The aggressor challenges him to a fair fight this time and accuses him of using a dirty trick. Hearing this, the protagonist breaks into a wicked and frightening smile. He covers his eyes and pretends the bully's aura is so strong it's blinding him with power. The young man says the effect of the plum pill is incredible and wonders how he could possibly beat him. The aggressor turns completely red and flustered by the young man's unexpected compliment. His friend scolds him and asks if he didn't hear that the pill was stolen, and he confirms he did. The girl asks his father why Jin is being so strange, and the young man pulls them closer. He then shows a bag full of expensive sweets to the younger brothers of the sect. The children get excited about the sweets, and his friend scolds him for not buying food. She tells him to go inside and thinks that even when he was away, he only worried about the Taya sect. The young woman explains that the guild is busy with the banquet and the robbery, so they won't come to bother them. With an annoyed face, she yells at him to never suddenly disappear like that again. The young man blushes, surprised by the concern his younger sister has shown. He is confused by what she said, but decides not to correct her because of her kindness. But his father appears and reveals that the Taya sect is also scheduled to go to the banquet. The young man despairs because their attendance has already been decided, and they can't miss it without a reason. He thinks in frustration that he needs to come up with some kind of excuse for them not to go at all. The protagonist then turns to his father with a confused and worried expression on his face, but his father surprises him by saying that he will go to the sect alone and that everyone else must stay. Our hero wonders what is happening, and suddenly one of the younger ones pokes him. The little boy is holding a rice cake wrapped in paper especially for him. He and his friend are shocked to recognize the rice cake from the Gairong Guild's banquet. The boy says he saved it to eat with him and asks if he should throw it away now that he has sweets. The boy saved the sweet for him and confesses that if he had been one day later, he wouldn't have been able to resist. With a genuine and emotional smile, the protagonist thanks his younger brother for the gesture. Without a second thought, he takes the rice cake and eats it all at once in front of everyone. Our hero says it's delicious, and the little boy complains that half of that piece was his. He apologizes and says it was so good he ate it all, but offers his sweets in return. The little boy's face turns red, and he asks in surprise if he is being serious. All the younger brothers run to get the sweets, and his friend scolds him for his attitude. She asks if the Iron Sword sect will keep inviting them forever if they don't go. The protagonist then realizes that not going to the banquet won't solve their problem. He understands that they will have to endure endless humiliations, and that is simply impossible. With a confident smile, the young man decides that they must go to the Iron Sword sect. On the day of the birthday banquet, a large procession heads to the rival sect. Our hero's group walks slowly towards the party location with serious expressions. The hall leader says there is something he needs to keep in mind when they arrive at the sect. The man warns him not to act recklessly under any circumstances. The young man asks if he came to the banquet in the sect leader's place just to keep an eye on him. The hall master scolds him, saying he is already acting recklessly and annoyingly. Another man scolds him for causing trouble and running away from home without any notice. He retorts that the hall leader never cared about him before and is now bothering him. The young man asks his father if it's just his imagination or if he's been quiet since they decided to go. The man scolds him, saying he will endure the insults, and asks if he is going through a rebellious phase. The protagonist ignores the question and keeps walking, not caring about the complaint. They try to pass but are stopped by a group that accuses them of trying to cut in line. The man from the other group yells and asks what they are saying with such audacity. The hall leader gets angry and asks if the man knows who he is yelling at like that. One of the young men from the other group interrupts the fight and says he will explain the situation. He introduces himself as Kyangza from the Chunchu sect and extends his hand with an arrogant smile. The man asks if they can move aside a bit, since they've heard of their famous sect. Everyone in line is startled to hear the sect's name and apologizes, letting them pass. The protagonist glares at him with a cold, serious look because he recognizes the name of that sect. He remembers that Kyangso is a future scoundrel and a sworn brother of Gai Chialiang, and together they use the disciples of the Taya sect, as if they were their own servants. The man from the other sect mocks them, saying they froze when they heard the sect's name. Another member asks if the Taya sect is one of the Alliance's 108 peaks. He continues to mock, saying the sect is controversial and didn't deserve to be among the peaks. Suddenly, the protagonist becomes enraged when he hears them say the rival sect will steal their spot. He pretends not to have heard the sect's name and asks if they can repeat what they said. The man is shocked by the question and doesn't understand the young man's attitude at that moment. The others in our hero's group also pretend not to recognize the name and mock the situation. They all play dumb and ask where they heard about that sect. With a mocking smile, the protagonist asks if they heard the name in a latrine. The members of the other sect are furious and shocked by the insult they just heard. The group leader puts his hand on his sword and glares at him with hatred and surprise at his audacity. He draws his sword and yells, asking how they dare to insult the Qingzhou sect like that. Suddenly, a female voice emerges and asks what is going on and why there is so much commotion. A member of the Iron Sword sect appears and stops the fight with her sword. Everyone is surprised to see the famous Iron Sword of Miryang and her beauty. The woman asks if everyone came to her grandfather's banquet for a special occasion. With a provocative look, she asks if they came to see some action at the birthday party. The protagonist reflects on the sect that emerged only 150 years ago and was already so strong. They had no grudges. But the fact that they were in the same place was a problem. The Iron Sword sect wanted to take the Taya sect's status among the 108 peaks. In his past life, he argued with the sect leader's grandson, who insulted his people and challenged him. To stop the fight, his father had to kneel and apologize in front of everyone. But with a determined look, he promises that this time things will be very different. The woman asks again about the commotion with an expression of disdain and superiority. She questions if they came to her grandfather's banquet, hoping to see some action. The man from the other sect recognizes her, and she asks what happened to cause such a fuss. He blames the protagonist and says there are no rules about saving a spot in the sect's line. The woman introduces herself as Seal Rang Moran from the Iron Sword sect and apologizes. As compensation, she offers to escort the Taya sect and the guild inside. The group is then led inside the sect by the long, red-haired woman. The bully Chialiang compliments her, saying the rumors don't do her beauty justice. She thanks him and says that the young leader of the sect is eagerly waiting for them. The young man wonders if his actions influenced the attitude of the sect leader's granddaughter. She leads them to a huge building and announces that they have arrived at the banquet location. The protagonist notices that the place is much larger and is suspicious of the woman's goodwill. He decides to observe the situation for now and enters the banquet hall cautiously. The woman introduces her grandfather, the leader of the Iron Sword sect, who is in the center of the hall. Next to him is her father, the young leader of the sect, whom he considers to be nothing special. The guild master greets the two and says it's been a long time since they've met. The young sect leader tells him to drop the formalities and asks about his son. He laughs and says if it weren't for the privileges of the peaks, he would have taken him as a disciple. Everyone comments that it's a waste for a treasure like Chialiang to be in the Taya sect. The woman calls for her father's attention and says he should greet the people from the sect. The man glares at them with a look of contempt and disdain without saying a single word. The protagonist's father and the hall leader formally introduce themselves with a bow. The young leader asks our hero's father if it's been 20 years since the incident. The protagonist is confused and wonders what incident he is talking about now. He asks how sect leader Hong is doing, and if the young woman who came with them is his daughter. The man points to the protagonist and says, he is the disappointing son of the hall leader. He says it's obvious what one can expect from someone who is with the Taya sect anyway. The woman says he shouldn't bother teaching the martial arts of the Taya sect to him. With a wicked smile, the man says he doesn't want him to become a third-rate artist. The protagonist thinks the man considers himself superior, but is just a third-rate wanderer, and he gets annoyed because every word the man says is a real bother to him. The young sect leader yells at him and asks what on earth he is saying now. The young man apologizes and says he was thinking out loud, and the other calls him shameless. Our hero confronts him and accuses him of disrespecting his sect and his family with his words. He apologizes ironically and says that one shouldn't treat an arrogant person with discourtesy. The woman laughs and wonders who this incredibly bold and courageous young man is. The sect leader glares at him with a serious and furious look at the boy's attitude. The young leader turns red with anger and calls him a darned wretch through clenched teeth. The protagonist glares at him with a defiant look and asks if he won't accept his apology. The man grips the cup in his hand tightly, and his anger grows with each passing second. He shouts and calls him an arrogant brat, preparing to attack him with the cup. Suddenly, one of the guards announces that the strategist of the Mirim Alliance has just arrived. The man rushes to welcome the strategist and tells everyone to hurry and go greet him. The guild master is excited and surprised by the arrival of the Alliance's strategist. He calls the sect leader and says they should go together to pay their respects to the important man. The guild leader calls his son, and the protagonist tells his father that he will go with him too. The leader of the Iron Sword sect orders them to bring all the gifts immediately. The young leader huffs in anger and goes to welcome the important guest who has arrived. His friend asks if they should go too, and our hero says it's better to secure a good spot. Suddenly, someone grabs him by the collar and calls him a wretch in a voice full of anger. It's the hall leader, who scolds him for using that language with the young sect leader. But the protagonist defends himself and says that if he hadn't intervened, he would have drawn his sword. He explains that if he saw the provocation, the young leader must have noticed it too, and it was on purpose. The man warns him not to be reckless, as the Iron Sword sect is provoking them. The young man asks what exactly happened 20 years ago and why he is so bitter. His father remains silent for a moment with an expression of pain and sadness. The tension in the air is palpable, and the protagonist waits for an answer that doesn't come. The woman interrupts the conversation and invites them to sit in a good spot inside the hall. The hall leader thanks her and says they should go quickly as it's a great offer. They are taken to a prime location with a beautiful view and elegant decoration. The VIP seat has a clear view of a large and beautiful lake with lotus flowers, and the table is filled with delicacies they would never dream of seeing in their lives. The woman asks for the young master's name, and he says it's Jin So-woon and questions her. She explains that the sect's rules do not include women in important matters, so she won't go. The young sect leader has 2 children. One is the Iron Sword Blood Wolf, Song Mo Hyan, and the other is the Iron Sword Charming Wolf, Song Moran, the woman accompanying them. Her brother grew up monopolizing all the sect's resources and is the heir. As for the sister, she is a genius who will enter the Mirim Academy along with her older brother. While eating, the protagonist reflects on the siblings and the treatment he is receiving from her. With a smile, she asks if he knows so much about her because he is interested in her. She apologizes for her father and says she is just sharing rumors she has heard a lot. The woman comments that her father must regret losing Chia-Leong to them. The protagonist takes a bite of food and says there's one thing that made him curious. He looks at her and asks with what intention the Iron Sword sect invited the Taya sect. The woman looks back at him with a mysterious smile and a confident expression on her face. She replies that a banquet is an important occasion where people gather to celebrate. But the young man interrupts her and says that many incidents in history have occurred during banquets. The young woman watches him in silence for a moment with a serious and calculating look. She calls him interesting and says it's time for her to leave. But she wanted to eat with him. With a bow, she says goodbye and says she hopes he enjoys the rest of the party. The woman walks away, and the protagonist watches her leave the hall in thoughtful silence. His friend calls out to him, and he is confused by the situation, but she just huffs irritably. At night, several young people gather to talk and drink in the sect's courtyard. One of them approaches the woman and invites her to join them at the evening banquet. Several other young men invite her to join them, and she is unsure of what to do. Suddenly, a voice calls her, and she turns to see who it is with a surprised expression. It is her servant who calls her and asks where she went, as the young master is looking for her. The woman flees to the roof and says she can finally breathe a sigh of relief, away from everyone. She thinks the young master of the Tai sect was interesting and remembers his attitude. He never bowed his head and was truly confident, even in front of her father. The young woman wonders if he isn't afraid of the Iron Sword sect, or if he's just crazy. Suddenly, she notices something and questions what she just saw in the courtyard. She sees the young woman from the Taya sect and Chia Liang leaving together and wonders where they are going. The woman remembers that the young men who invited her talked about a banquet for the disciples. The bully approaches the protagonist's friend, and she wonders why only the two of them are going. With a malicious smile, the woman realizes this is going to be very fun to watch. Someone knocks on the protagonist's door, and he asks who is on the other side. He opens the door and is surprised to see who is standing there in front of him. It's the young Song, who looks at him with a seductive smile and a mysterious expression. She invites him to a banquet prepared for the young people to build friendships. He thanks her but politely declines, saying the day has been long and he is exhausted. The woman asks if it's true that everyone from the sect is tired, and he confirms that they are. But she surprises him by saying that she saw the young Hong on her way to the disciples' banquet. The young man remembers that in his past life, he couldn't hold back and ended up in a duel with her grandson. That's why he tried to avoid the banquet this time, so his father wouldn't be humiliated. But now he realizes he has no choice and must go to the banquet to protect his friend. He can't leave her alone in a place where the Iron Sword sect might have set a trap. He gets up and decides to go with her to ensure nothing bad happens to the young woman. The woman looks at him with a challenging gaze and asks if he thinks they would set a trap. The protagonist smiles and accuses her of having an inferiority complex regarding his sect. He remembers that women do not participate in important matters and wonders if she knows something. She admits that the Taya sect is a thorn in their side, but that doesn't change anything. Angrily, she says that the Iron Sword sect doesn't act like a bunch of street thugs. The young man gives a mischievous smile and prepares for what's to come. He says he's going to make a prediction that her brother will create an opportunity to humiliate them, and eventually, he will turn the Taya sect into a laughingstock for everyone. The woman says she misjudged him and that he is just a lunatic with a persecution complex. He looks at her and says he also hopes it's just a delusion on his part now. The scene shows a pavilion in the middle of a lake, where the young people's banquet is taking place. Inside the hall, one of the young men from the Iron Sword sect mocks the Taya sect. He questions how the Taya sect is still part of the 108 Peaks and his sect is not. The bully Chia Liang agrees and says his guild is tied to the sect because of the admission. Everyone laughs at the protagonist's friend, who is speechless and doesn't know what to say. She hangs her head in shame and anger for not being able to defend herself from the insults. The man raises his cup and says he is satisfied because senior brother Jin is not there. He approaches her and demands to hear the official position of the Tai sect on the matter. With a wicked smile, he says that stagnant and rotten water must be drained for the greater good. The young woman panics, not knowing what to say in the face of the man's provocation. She clutches the fabric of her clothes tightly and tries to find an answer to the question. Suddenly, the protagonist appears in the hall and says they agree with what was said. The woman recognizes him, and one of the men calls her the beautiful iron sword charming wolf. He invites her to sit next to him, but she apologizes and says she is just escorting a guest. The bully questions him about why he is with the young song, and the protagonist ignores him. He calls him a wretch, and the young man scoffs at him, asking if he considers himself a senior brother. He accuses him of standing idly by while his sect was being insulted and humiliated. The protagonist's friend shouts for him to stop fighting and asks what he is doing there. He says with a smile that he came in her place because he was worried she would cause an incident. With a serious look, he notices that while everyone was mocking the sect, others were keeping an eye on them. He sees that the awakened divine dragon and the blood wolf couldn't care less about the commotion. This is the eldest son of the Namgung clan and one of the hidden dragons of Anhui in the alliance, and the other is the iron sword blood wolf, Song Mo Hyan, the grandson of the sect leader. The protagonist looks at him and realizes he is the true host of the banquet, not the others. The man from the other group approaches and accuses him of interrupting his conversation with his friend. With a mischievous smile, he asks if the young man intends to answer on her behalf. The protagonist looks at him in silence for a moment, unintimidated by the provocation. He grabs a piece of food and says he literally just said he agrees with him. The man is shocked, and the young man continues, saying a lake only stays clean with fresh water. He bites into the food and says that only works if the new water is actually clean. As an example, he cites the green bamboo castle and its history of betrayal and dishonor. He asks why a power like theirs hasn't joined the 108 peaks yet. With a wicked smile, he reveals it's because of the blood incident from 60 years ago. The man turns pale with fear and surprise upon hearing the protagonist mention the incident. The young man explains that the brothers of the green bamboo castle fought among themselves for power. He fills his cup and says not to misunderstand, as they are an excellent sect, but he refuses to trust a group where brothers betray each other for power and ambition. He drinks the contents of the cup and says he'd rather not have to fight the underworld. With a wink, he says he'd rather not have to ally with such dishonorable people. The others are shocked and frightened by the young man's audacity and courage. The man grabs him by the collar and calls him a wretch for mentioning their dishonor. He accuses him of mentioning the dishonor of the green bamboo castle in front of everyone. The protagonist looks at him calmly and asks what he thinks he is doing at that moment. The man is startled to see the sect leader's grandson approaching and immediately backs away. The young song scolds him for disrespecting a guest of the Iron Sword sect. He says that insulting one of their guests is the same as insulting their own sect. He tells his sister Moron to stay out of it and says the green bamboo castle started the fight. The protagonist claims he clearly saw the man disrupt a constructive discussion. His friend despairs and asks the young Shang to take the blame and apologizes. The young man kneels and says it seems he has ruined the banquet with his attitude. He apologizes and says he has no excuse for what he did and will accept the punishment. The woman is confused and surprised by the protagonist's attitude and his apology. He also apologizes to the man from the other group for mentioning his sect's affairs. With a serious look, he says they will take their leave and asks him to enjoy the banquet. He calls his friend and tells them to leave, but she is confused by the situation. Suddenly, the sect leader's grandson stops him from leaving and tells him to wait a moment. He accuses him of insulting a guest in his home and asks about his reputation. As a disciple and grandson of the sect leader, he cannot let the matter pass with a request. With a wicked smile, he says he cannot let this go with a simple apology. He then challenges him to a duel to settle the matter once and for all right there. The woman is shocked and realizes there is no point in trying to avoid what is destined to happen. The protagonist laughs insanely and accepts the challenge with a look of pure madness. He laughs and says it's useless to fight against fate, and what is meant to happen will happen. With a confident smile, he says he was right all along, and the woman is startled. A tear runs down her face as she realizes his prediction has come true. The hall leader scolds him for accepting the challenge and asks how he will deal with the consequences. His friend agrees and says that senior brother Jin is right and that he shouldn't have gotten involved. The protagonist looks at her and says she understands what he means, but should have held back. He warns her about the danger of the duel and says she could have been seriously injured. The young woman huffs in anger and looks at him with a serious and worried expression about what is to come. The young man comforts her and tells her not to worry, as he has a plan and won't get hurt. The man shouts at him and asks why he is joking around at a time like this. He turns to the young man's father and asks if he is going to remain silent and say nothing. But the protagonist interrupts him and says he can handle the situation himself, and no one needs to interfere. He asks the man to trust him just this once, and the hall leader is shocked. With a sigh of frustration, he agrees and tells him to do as he pleases. The protagonist looks at him with a serious and determined gaze, ready for what is to come. He turns to his father and tells him not to worry, as everything will be fine in the end. The next day at the Iron Sword sect, the atmosphere is tense and heavy. The protagonist's friend runs up to him and asks why he is in such a hurry. He is surprised to see her and wonders what happened to the outer hall leader. The young man is shocked and doesn't understand what is happening at that moment. He runs down the sect's corridor, worried about what might have happened to his father. He remembers telling him not to worry, as he feared something like this would happen. In front of a crowd, the young man's father is kneeling, apologizing to the rival sect. The leader of the Iron Sword sect watches the scene with a look of contempt and satisfaction. The young sect leader and his father watch the humiliation with arrogant smiles. The leader apologizes to the strategist for showing him such an unpleasant scene. The Murim Alliance strategist watches the scene with a serious and calculating look. He realizes that the Iron Sword sect is trying to force the Taya sect out of the peaks. The protagonist's father apologizes and says his son committed an act worthy of punishment. The leader of the Iron Sword sect looks at him and tells him to explain what happened. The man's shadow is cast on the ground. He explains that his son used offensive words. With an ironic smile, the leader says the apple doesn't fall far from the tree and remembers something. The protagonist is shocked and shouts, asking what on earth his father is doing. He looks at him with a look of despair and confusion, not understanding his father's actions. The young man shouts for him to get up and asks why he is kneeling like a sinner. His father says that no father can remain silent watching his son be hurt or humiliated. With a serious and determined look, the protagonist tells him to step aside and leave it to him. His father's hand trembles with anger and frustration at the situation they are in. The sect leader's grandson mocks him and says a father's love is truly extraordinary. He says he will let it go because of the father's sincerity, but demands that he kneel. The protagonist draws his sword with a swift movement and prepares to fight him. He tells his father that he has already drawn his sword and that his apology is now meaningless. His father remains silent with his hands on the ground, red stains spreading from his injuries. The young man turns to his opponent and says he just wanted to show them he's not all talk. His friend and the hall leader watch him with concern and fear of what will happen. His father warns him that his action is very reckless. But the young man is not fazed. He promises he won't let him down and asks him to just watch what will happen. The sun shines in the blue sky as the two prepare for the duel that is about to begin. The sect leader's grandson looks at him with an arrogant smile, confident of victory. He says he is eager to see the skill of a disciple from a peak sect. The protagonist knows his opponent grew up with all the sect's resources and is very strong, but he also knows that his heavy sword is a bad match for his speed technique. He decides to use the lesser heaven sword technique to overwhelm him with his speed. The opponent watches him with a serious look and prepares for the coming attack. The two clash in a collision of swords, and the force of the blow is immense and powerful. The sect leader's grandson calls him a rat and compares him to a weak, insignificant animal. The protagonist dodges the blows with agility and grace, avoiding being hit by the sword. The opponent's sword passes close to his face, but he manages to dodge in time. The impact of the blow creates an explosion of energy and dust in the middle of the training yard. The strategist watches the fight and comments that the Taiya sect truly lacks talent. The opponent looks at him with a scornful smile and asks if that's all he's got. The protagonist pants from exhaustion, and sweat pours down his face as he prepares himself. The sect leader's grandson humiliates him and says he is nothing, and what can be expected from the sect. With a single blow, he drives his sword into the ground and says, "This is just the beginning." He charges to attack again, and the protagonist prepares for the next move. The two face off in an intense battle, and our hero struggles to defend against the blows. He feels pressured by the opponent's strength and realizes he is incredibly strong. The sect leader's grandson remembers another person who challenged him in the past, just like him. He tells about a man from a sect who insulted him and challenged him to a duel. The man refused to apologize and said he would not admit to a mistake he did not make, and as punishment, he was struck with the flat side of a blazing, incandescent sword. His back, chest, and stomach were marked as punishment for his audacity and courage. With a wicked smile, the sect leader's grandson prepares to reveal the man's name, and that man's name was none other than Jin Taizan of the Taiya sect, the protagonist's father. The young man is shocked and remembers his father, and the other leaders with expressions of pain. He turns to his father and asks what on earth he is talking about so calmly. His father looks at him with a serious gaze and an expression of pain and sadness on his face. The opponent attacks him and scolds him for looking away during an ongoing duel. The protagonist is thrown back by the force of the blow and cries out in pain from the impact. The hall leader and his friends shout his name, worried about what just happened. The sect leader's grandson looks at him with contempt and says the fight is completely meaningless. He mocks the protagonist and says father and son are alike, completely brainless. Others in the audience mock the Taiya sect and say they are truly pathetic. The leader of the Iron Sword sect smiles and says the humiliating history will repeat itself. But the protagonist gets up and says that's what everyone thinks, but they are mistaken. With a determined look, he prepares to show everyone his true power. He charges forward to attack with the lesser heaven sword technique and surprises everyone. The opponent defends against the blow and is surprised by the strength and speed of the attack. He looks at him with a shocked expression and wonders how he managed to do that. With a smile, the protagonist prepares for the next move with confidence. The two face off again, and our hero moves with incredible speed and precision. The sect leader's grandson calls him a cursed rat and wonders how he dodges the blows. The protagonist remembers all the books and techniques he memorized in his past life. The opponent shouts and asks what kind of trick he is using to fight like that. The young man concentrates and says he needs to get stronger and stronger to defeat his enemies. He uses the lesser heaven sword technique again, with even more strength and precision. He continues to fight until he reaches the point where he can finally change the outcome. The protagonist approaches his opponent with a serious look, determined to win. With a powerful blow, he strikes him, making him cry out in pain and surprise from the attack. He smiles and asks if that's all the Iron Sword sect can show him.